Hey everybody, welcome back into another edition of Rapid Recap here at Inside Nebraska. With me as always is Greg Smith. I'm Zack Carpenter, and guys, we're here with, yes, another leaf blower at Memorial Stadium. If you hear that in the background, just always the timing when we do these each Monday. But even with the leaf blower, if you like this video, encourage you guys to give it a like and subscribe to the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel. We have Matt Rhule with a 35-minute press conference. You can see full video of that at the Inside Nebraska.
Sorry, I'm sorry I messed up your whole thing, but it felt like it was 35 minutes.
Yeah,
but then he got rolling at the end.
Longer.
Yes, then he got rolling at the end.
Because it was, I mean, it was 35 minutes, and then it felt like 40 to 45. Because Greg, I mean, that's at least in the running. It's a candidate for the best rule presser, the most interesting rule presser since his time here, however you want to look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. There were a handful of things that were talked about that, and we talk about this all the time, right? Is that like you ask him a question, he answers the question, and then takes it in a totally different area that then makes you go, And if you don't catch it the first time, he was
asking a question about James Williams, and it turned into how Ethan Nation's one of the guys who we may redshirt or not redshirt.
Yes, like it just like and then we'll get to this. All of his stuff about kind of the scandal that is at Michigan and sign stealing, the refs, the not complaining about the refs, but taking shots at replay, all of it.
Yeah.
It was really interesting.
Yeah, we'll get to replay in a second, but just to start off here, I mean, he was asked I think 2 or 3 questions about Michigan because one of his first answers was saying like I feel bad for our team because we're 5-4, but we own 5-4, but we had two touchdowns taken away against us, and he was talking about the Minnesota game, the Gabe Ervin touchdown. That was a touchdown, but wasn't, and then the Michigan State touchdown with Foster in the end zone there. And then he also said we had one game where the opponent scouted us, and he was talking about Michigan. He was later was asked more about that. And it was the first time I've seen him like sort of not flustered or like stammer and like not know what to say.
He didn't, he is always very in control up there and has the points that he wants to get to. You could tell that he wanted to get to certain points with all of his Michigan answers. He just didn't want to say like the wrong thing. I would have loved to hear the unfiltered version of that so that he didn't have to worry about all that. But when he's with us, he's got to kind of give us the filtered version. But he still got his point across. I think that the larger point on all of that was he's going to stand up for his guys. And he said something really interesting, I thought, is where he talked about Ryan Walters and the news that kind of that made the rounds about Ryan Walters really kind of being I want to say the first coach in the Big Ten to really like publicly on video say something bad about what happened at Michigan, where he said he knew for a fact that Michigan scouted them and was at several of their games. Matt Rhule said that he turns around and his players are saying, "Hey, coach, what do you think about this?" So, of course, he had to go out there and say something about it as well. They need to defend their honor as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. The only 2 coaches now who have spoken publicly about the Michigan sign stealing scandal are the 2 first-year head coaches in the Big Ten with Walters and Rhule, because I think there's sort of like a hush-hush thing of like the veteran coaches in that league aren't really going to, I don't think I have too many comments to say about it, but I think Rhule is clearly like I said, sort of flustered, but clearly was pissed off about the whole situation of the sign stealing.
The more I think about it, the more I remember what he said. Remember the thing he said about, yes, maybe the people go, oh, what would it have mattered because they got blown out? He goes, well, if you had recruits in from all over the country, as they did, and the game gets out of hand early, that makes a real difference if that game is close and it's a little bit more exciting for them. So, like, even saying stuff like that, he's thought about this quite a bit. This is why I think that you've heard those reports about these explosive behind-the-scenes calls with Big Ten coaches on like those private coaches calls. You can totally see how that stuff has gotten kind of explosive by the stuff that Matt Rhule just said in public today.
I would die to be a fly on the wall for one of those calls. I'm really interested to see to hear if Rhule was one of those outspoken on one of those calls with Tony Petitti in the commissioner's office.
But real curious.
Back to the replays from Saturday and the officiating from Saturday. Husker fans, Matt Rhule is with you. You guys are kindred spirits in that way. Like he was clearly much angrier about the calls than he let on at the press conference. Yes. But the fact of him opening up so much about them tells you where his mind was at with those the replay review with the fourth quarter touchdown to put Michigan State up 20-10, and then the call at the end He was kind of in what I said in upon further review, and then on Sunday, which upon further review you can check out at InsideNebraska.com, and stuff about the officiating, and the calls and non-calls and replays. Rhule said something similar of, yeah, it was a defensive pass interference. That was a face mask against Heinrich Haarberg. Defense PI against Malachi Coleman on the long touchdown or the long throw. And he's like, you can live with those because it's officiating, it's on field, like heat of the moment
stuff happens fast, yeah.
Okay, it sucks, but you can live with it. But the replay reviews is where he was really angry.
Yeah, and those are tough. When you have ones like the touchdown, and he references a couple of times in talking about, again, he was talking about something else totally, about Heinrich Haarberg and turnovers and managing that. He said he doesn't count that one because his arm was going forward. Like, he was very clearly made clear to say that. And then I don't know if he referenced or not the play in that last drive where Malachi caught the ball clearly for a first down and they marked it a first down. That's the only one I think he did not reference. He could have.
Well, there were a lot of them.
And there were so many of them. Like, what, 5 or 6 of them that were
four in the
really,
fourth quarter.
those are really hard. And you said that he was much angrier today about it. And it caught my attention when he said after the game that sometimes you guys up top, you can see a little bit better from my vantage point from on the field. Clearly, he watched it, and he had a much different take when it came to it today.
Not true with the DPI call. I mean, you see him on the broadcast. And I mean, in real time, he is like, he puts his hands up like. And the look on his face was not anger. It was almost like, oh my God, what?
Yeah.
Like, how is that not called? And the Tim Brando and Spencer Tillman on the call were right there with him. Like, that's a pass interference. Like, there's no other way around it. They talked about it a lot. I mean, officiating, if it was just the non-call on the face mask, the non-call on the DPI, if it was just like a couple like that, you live with it. Like, damn, like. That's really frustrating. It factored into the game, but it wasn't like a huge factor. But the fact that it was all of those things adding up, I think is what made it so frustrating.
Yeah, and I think that, and the one thing that Matt Rhule does a really nice job of in these situations, I think, is walk that line between explaining to you that all of those things did affect the game, but he makes sure to say every single time that we still have to play through that stuff and rise above it because bad things are going to happen and you have to be able to overcome adversity. I think that he stopped short of saying we still had opportunities to win the game. He didn't say that exactly word for word, but they did, right? Like, especially with some of those ones, the stuff that happened earlier in the game, they had opportunities after that. The stuff at the end of the game in the fourth quarter where, you lose an extra 16 seconds, you lose possession of the ball. Yeah, that stuff you can't really do anything about. That does, in effect, cost you the game. But I think that he did a nice job of kind of walking that line today.
Not to advertise myself too much or give myself too much of a pat on the back, but whenever Rhule says something in the press conference, which is either like the exact same thing or very similar to something I've said or written, I'm just like, okay, cool. Like, so I'm on the right track of where the mentality should be, because like you said, with there are all these other factors that went into Nebraska losing other than just the calls, and he mentioned that before getting into that stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, this is why they lost, but the officiating also was a heavily significant factor. And same thing, Rhule used the word demons. You gotta face your demons.
Actually, it was actually great.
That's what I said about after they beat Purdue. Is like they're exercising another Scott Frost demon.
Yeah, because and I think that he's right. You both are correct about that. And that this program does a lot of, like, it's tough where you have to embrace the expectations of being here, but then you also don't want it to overtake you and like you just be overwhelmed by the moment. But Matt Rhule has come in and said, listen, we've got to go right into the put your face in the fan kind of a situation and just embrace that stuff. He talks about it all the time, particularly at quarterback, about how if you're going to be the quarterback here, it's just going to be different. It's going to be hard. But as a team, you have to understand, and what comes with, I guess, all of this that's around us, all this fan support, the NIL money, all of that, it comes with a lot of pressure, and it's okay to embrace that because, like he said very correctly, and I thought this is maybe his best line, in that at Nebraska, it better start to matter in November when you play football. Every November here at Nebraska should matter. All of those games should matter, and the players need to embrace that.
Yeah, he didn't use the phrase fishbowl, but that's the phrase we all use, and that's what he was talking about. That's what he was referencing and breaking down there is like, there's a fishbowl here, there's a lot of pressure here, and especially at quarterback, like you said. And that was the other big takeaway that I wanted to break down was for everyone who wants to see Jeff Sims or Chubba Purdy.
Chuba?
Yeah, Chubba Purdy, according to multiple TV broadcasts this season. Whoever wants this, the phrase like, well, you got to see what you have in Chubba Purdy, or you got to see what you have in Sims, like run them out there. Like coming into today, and now even more so, I'm more steadfastly and confidently saying, like, you can be mad and frustrated about Heinrich Haarberg's quarterback play. It's justified. It is fair. But you're either going to have to accept or not accept that Heinrich Haarberg is the quarterback for this team the rest of this season. Like, just say it one more time for the back for me, Greg.
Heinrich Haarberg is the quarterback for the rest of this season.
Thank you.
And it's not. I don't think that this is really a discussion anymore, and I'm honestly surprised that it continues to come up every single week. It
aggravates
now.
the hell out of me, because it's like we just did this last week with Purdue and Jeff Sims.
On one hand, I should take it back. I understand a little bit because of the turnovers and the uneven play, but at the same time, I think this is one of those situations where you have to start to wonder if they're continuing to roll with him and, quote, as Matt Rhule always says, work through his issues with him. There's something else that they're seeing that is preventing them from putting the other two quarterbacks in, right?
Yes.
And so I just
Read
think
between the lines.
yes, I just think that sometimes we've got to accept that. Again, please, begging you. Again, I don't think that, and I'm going to say again, maybe for the first time on this video, I've said it before to you, I'll say it on this video, I do think they're going to address that situation in the transfer portal. I do think that quarterback is going to be priority 1 and 1A for Nebraska in the offseason, because you cannot continue to go about wasting a defense that is that good when if you had solid offensive performances, your team would be much better, right? And so you're going to have to do that, and I do think they're going to do that. But for right now and for what this team is, Haarberg is the guy, and they're just going to have to work through it. He's going to have his opportunity to show that they don't need to go get that guy or two in the portal. I don't know if that's going to happen, but he is the guy for right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just not going to keep going on about it. I've
Your
said my
point's
piece.
made.
I've said my piece. You've said yours. I mean, and we're both in agreement. I've spoken enough about it, but just I feel strongly enough about that. It had to be talked about. But you mentioned last thing to break down is you talked about the defense. Rhule talked about it again. Upon further review, I referenced at InsideNebraska.com last night. I went back and charted all of Nebraska's explosive play touchdowns of the season, which in my definition of explosive plays is 20 yards or more, whether it's a pass or a run. Okay. I know some people have 15-yard pass, 10-yard run, but I just have it as 20-yard gain or more in either area. And Nebraska has had an explosive play touchdown, at least one, if not two, in every single game this year except for Saturday. Okay. And that's when they had the 43-yard Haarberg run, but he didn't finish it off, and it cost them about 20 seconds. And those little margins, the margin for error that Nebraska's playing in right now. And the defense coming into, I charted the explosive plays allowed by a defense during the 3-game winning streak, and again on Saturday against Michigan State. And yeah, there's a stark difference. That was a big reason they lost against Michigan State, was those explosive plays allowed in the passing game. And Rhule talked about that today. The Illinois touchdown over Quentin Newsome, the one with Purdue, a couple of the big plays, the 66-yarder Northwestern game. Michigan State had 4 of them, including 2 of 40-plus yards. And he talked about, I think for the first time, like, we're allowing too many plays in the explosive passing game. Maybe that was subtle timing when you have a pass-heavy team for the first time coming into Memorial Stadium for the second time with Louisiana Tech as well. But first time in the Big Ten with Maryland coming in, and they're led by quarterback Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes, the Tagovailoa, is coming into town for Maryland. It's interesting, too, because he talked about a lot about how those plays are happening, not because they're just getting beat straight up one-on-one, though they do play a lot of man. He said a lot of that is bad eyes, bad technique, and you can live with some plays that a guy just goes up and makes a really great play, but if somebody is just busting coverage, then that's a whole different thing, and that's what they definitely had against Michigan State. But I noted that kind of during the game, too, on the flip side of that on offense, that the difference for me for Nebraska's offense on Saturday against Michigan State and East Lansing is they ran the ball fine without having those chunk plays, right? They just didn't have those explosive plays, and that's the difference between them being okay as a rushing unit and being one of the top rushing units per yards, that's what it says, in the Big Ten. And so, yeah, missing those plays really, really did hurt them, and that's what they have to get back to that this weekend against Maryland, and then conversely stopping those and getting some sacks as well.
Yeah, they had 6 plays, I think, of 10 yards or more in the run game, but I don't think they had one of 5. One of them obviously was the 43-yarder with Haarberg, but I think the other 5 were all like 11, 12, 16-yard gains, which is obviously a positive, but didn't shake loose for those explosive play touchdowns, which, again, I thought it was pretty fascinating that in every game they've had one. Even Michigan, their touchdown came on a 74-yard Josh Fleets
right over here, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it feels like this offense, it needs at least one of those explosive play touchdowns in order for this team to score and rely on the defense. But yeah, it's another tall task against Maryland coming in with just not unbeatable or anything. It's not as good of a Maryland team as I think we thought heading into that Ohio State game. But Rhule's been impressed. I mean, I think we need to head his comments after he was very impressed by Michigan State.
He was dead
going
on
into
Michigan
that game.
State.
And then, yeah, exactly. And then this week, I mean, he said the Patrick Mahomes comparison.
We'll see about that one, but you know.
Everyone loves to throw out Patrick Mahomes comparison.
It's weird. So many
guys.
Patrick Mahomes running around out
like,
there. I don't know. It's just weird.
I'm a Chiefs fan. I'm like, this guy is not Patrick Mahomes. Like, and not just Talia. There's a lot of guys who've been compared to Patrick Mahomes. It's like the only one that has actually lined up is Caleb Williams at USC.
Yeah, the Caleb Williams.
And then Dylan Raiola has a lot of that same flash. So like those are the only two where it's like I think they're fair, but quit throwing that around.
Don't put
Mahomes,
that pressure on.
That
but it helps if you get your defense locked in.
Yeah,
right?
that's all that matters.
Yeah,
and
that's what matters. That's why he says it.
That's why I wanted to reference it and talk about that a little bit. But that's it for us. We've already gone long on this one. There was a lot of stuff. We went long today because there was a lot of interesting takeaways, really interesting takeaways from Matt Rhule's 35-minute press conference, including Malachi Coleman, his thoughts on one of the best games he's seen from a receiver in his time as a coach. And I know Steve Marek, our resident football expert at Inside Nebraska, he's working on a story for the site, so I encourage you guys to go check that out at InsideNebraska.com and check out, again, the full Rhule press conference video over on our Inside Nebraska YouTube channel. So, Greg Smith, I'm Zack Carpenter, and we'll catch you guys again next time.